Hey guys, this is your community group video for this week. Sunday we're in a continuing sort of intermittent series where we're called We Are GCF, where we're looking at our mission statement and the 5 objective statements that help us understand how we're going to fulfill our mission in the world. We talked about John chapter 10 on Sunday, and at the beginning of John chapter 10, Jesus gives this figure of speech, this illustration. It really doesn't quite rise to the level of story. And Jesus basically says, if a thief tries to get into a sheepfold, and Jesus is envisioning a walled-off area where the sheep would be kept safe at night. But if a thief tries to get into the sheepfold, he's going to go over the wall because the thief could not get by the gatekeeper at the gate to get into the sheep. The shepherd, on the other hand, just walks right up to the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper knows who the shepherd is, and he lets the shepherd go through the gate to get into the sheep. And Jesus says the sheep will recognize the shepherd's voice, and they'll follow the shepherd and go after the shepherd. But a thief, if he gets somehow into the sheepfold, the sheep are going to run from him. They're not going to follow him because they don't know his voice. And that's Jesus's story, if we can call it that. Now, this was a common theme. The people knew how sheepfolds worked and how shepherding worked. And Jesus' story was really, his illustration was so simple, they weren't quite sure what they were supposed to do with it. And so kind of going, Jesus, can you help us out here a little? We know there's some deeper significance to that, but can you help us understand what the significance really is? And Jesus will go on to draw out 2 sort of significances of that brief illustration. But before we look at the 2 significances Jesus draws out of that, let's think about what's going on in Jesus's mind when he tells this story. And I think in part, he's thinking about Ezekiel chapter 34, back in the writings of the prophet Ezekiel. And in Ezekiel chapter 34, God addresses the religious leaders of Israel, who he calls the shepherds of Israel. And he tells them that they've been really rotten shepherds because they've been selfish and they've been self-centered and they haven't really given their attention to leading God's people. And when they have tried to lead God's people, they've led them in the wrong ways so that God's people have gotten into all kinds of trouble. So he says, hey, shepherds of Israel, religious leaders, you've been pretty rotten at what you're doing. And then God follows that up by saying, I'm going to become the shepherds of my people. And I'm going to lead them into green pastures and good things like their religious leaders should have done. And that's one of the things that's going on in Jesus' mind. And Jesus has got that going on in his mind from Ezekiel chapter 34, because immediately prior to this little illustration in John chapter 9, Jesus has had these dealings with some of the religious leaders of Israel. And remember, there's the story of the man who was blind, and Jesus heals him of his blindness. I think it's on the Sabbath day. And the religious leaders go berserk about this. Instead of celebrating this man gaining his sight, instead of celebrating the power that God has given to Jesus to heal, the religious leaders get upset that this man and Jesus have broken the law on the Sabbath. And Jesus sort of sees them as the epitome of these self-centered, selfish shepherds that Ezekiel addressed in chapter 34 of his writings. And so that's what's going on in Jesus's mind when he tells this story about sheep and shepherds. And Jesus draws out two significances of this story. The second one, which we didn't talk about on Sunday, not going to talk about much tonight, is Jesus says, I am the good shepherd who's going to lead God's people into the good things of the kingdom. If you can get sort of the Psalm 23 green pastures, still waters, protection when you're walking through difficult circumstances kind of image in your mind, God is saying, that's what my people need, and that's what I'm going to do. And Jesus, when he says, I'm the good shepherd, says, I am the one that God has sent to do this. I am God shepherding his people. That's what Jesus is saying when he says, I'm the good shepherd. And he adds, I'm a good shepherd, so instead of being selfish and self-centered, I'm going to lay down my life to do what needs to be done to make sure that the sheep have the good things of the kingdom and have the good things that God intends for them. That's the second thing. But the first thing, which we focused on Sunday, was Jesus says, not only I am the good shepherd, but he says, I am the gate. And especially in John chapter 10, verses 9 and 10, he says this, yes, I am the gate. Those who come in through me will be saved. Wherever they go, they will find green pastures. The thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. My purpose is to give life in all its fullness. And kind of the image that I think Jesus wants us to imagine, and that I encourage us to think about on Sunday, is to think about the kingdom of God as that sheepfold with that wall all the way around it. And there's only one gate by which you can enter into the kingdom of God. But what goes on with a lot of people is that they know, their heart longs for, and they know they want the good things of the kingdom of God, the green pastures, the still waters, the protection in difficult times, the overflowing cup, to be pursued by God, that whole, all of that imagery. But they don't know how to get those things of the kingdom in their lives. And so it's sort of like they're walking all around the sheepfold, bumping into the sheepfold with their heads, trying to get in, but they can't find the gate. And we talked metaphorically about how there are all sorts of different ways that people are trying to get into the kingdom, using substances, using sex, using money, using materialism, career, all sorts of ways that people are bumping against the wall trying to get into the kingdom, but they can't get into the kingdom. We said it then becomes incumbent upon us, when we have people in our lives who are bumping up against the wall, trying to get into the kingdom and get the good things of the kingdom, but they're doing it in all of the wrong ways. It becomes incumbent upon us, and this was our big idea from this story on Sunday, it becomes incumbent upon us to get them to the gate, to get people to the gate, to bring them to Jesus, so that through faith in Jesus Christ, they can enter in to all of the good things of the kingdom, these green pastures that Jesus talks about when he says, I am the gate. Our mission statement at GCF is inviting people to life in the kingdom of God, and the objective statement we were looking at on Sunday says, leading people to faith in Jesus. It's so crucial that we lead people to faith in Jesus, because Jesus is the gate. He's the only way to get into the good things of the kingdom of God. And so we attempt to get people to the gate, to get people to him so that they can enter into the kingdom. We talked about how our Back to Church Sunday coming up this week is one of our major emphases, major ways of doing that, of getting people to the gate during the course of the year. So here are 3 jumping off questions I want you to discuss with your group this week, or suggest you discuss with your group this week. Number 1, these were on the back of the weekly small group leaders. You can find them there. Number 1, discuss with your group someone that you know in your family, at work, a neighbor that you know is bumping up against the wall, and talk about with your group how you see them bumping up against the wall, and why you think they keep bumping up against the wall, and kind of what's going on in their lives that's keeping them from experiencing the goodness of the kingdom of God. By the way, let me remind you, what you share in your groups is confidential. So there may be someone who shares something about a friend or a family member or a coworker in response to this question, and they need to be able to trust other group members with what they're sharing. Question number 2. When you think about getting this person or people you've thought about who are bumping against the wall, when you think about the process of getting them to the gate, does that seem easy or difficult to you? Are you scared about the prospect of doing that, or are you confident in the prospect of working to get people to the gate, of getting people to Jesus, leading people to Jesus so that they can enter into the kingdom of God? So talk with your group a little about whether or not that seems easy to you, difficult to you, whether you're scared about it, confident about it, and why. Why do you find it easy or difficult? Why are you scared about it or confident about it? And just share openly about that with your group. And question number 3 is, what will you be doing this week to get someone to the gate, especially in regard to Back to Church Sunday coming up at GCF this week? And hey guys, it is going to be a great and awesome weekend. And so hope you guys are busy getting some people to the gate and inviting them to worship this weekend. I'll see you guys on Sunday if I don't see you around town before then.